Welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. U. Before we get into with our guest for today, if you're watching, listening for the very, very first time, thanks again for making us part of your week. I definitely appreciate it. We all do. And of course, if you are watching us live, we're on Facebook as well as YouTube right now. And if you're listening to us, you'll be able to hear the full episode on our listening platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, probably within the next 30 to 45 minutes after the show wraps today. But in studio with us today, Jean-Christian Rindoni. He's the founder of Symbiosis Infinity Group and a conscious growth advisor. This man has a lot going on, but I want you to hear his story and hear what he's doing for the world and the planet, man. So Jean-Christian, thanks for jumping into our show today. Thanks for joining One-on-One. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great after this long Easter weekend. It's been a busy weekend, but we're doing just fine. And as you said, like you, we have a lot going on. So we're blessed with opportunities to create and move forward in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're doing a lot of great things. I want to get into some of this stuff, man. But first, before we get into your work, customarily, I always want to know about the person. Like, who are you as a person? Where you from? How'd you get to who you were as a young person to who you are right now, man? So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's always good to know, personal background about people, because we all have a history, of course, and we all come from different places. So I come from a Sicilian family originally that immigrated to France in the 50s. My grandparents immigrated to France from a small village in Sicily to a small town in France, and I grew up mostly in France and got mostly also educated in France and in Canada. Lived all my life abroad since I'm 18 or 19 years old. Had the opportunity to be an international business development consultant from a young age. I started my career as a diplomat, but then went into international business development consultancy. Traveled, did business projects in 30 plus countries across many different timelines. And recently, a year ago, decided to put an additional layer to what I'm doing in my life, meaning finding my own purpose and making sure that I not only create wealth for myself, but also for the people that need it the most in this world.
I love that, man. And that last point is kind of where I want to hang out for a little bit, because I'm a person that believes that when we serve the interests of others, we help ourselves in the long run when we do that. We don't prioritize us in our own empires. It feels like that's kind of where you're coming from with what you're trying to accomplish. Because you mentioned about building wealth for others. Is that kind of how you feel as well? What kind of sparked that mindset that you have?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. I think the mindset is to be able to be of service to people. I think that as human beings, we should not be self-centered, and we should look around us, and we can always find good deeds to do and a good mindset to have around, just making your own environment and the world as a whole a better place with the abilities and the experiences and the strength that you have. And this is what happened to me, I think, a little bit over a year ago now. I went on a deep personal development and spiritual journey due to life circumstances that forced me to go inwards instead of just finding happiness outwards. I found it in myself and in God or the universe, whatever you believe in. And since then, it has put me on a path of purpose, a path of faith, and a path of knowing what my soul and my heart truly wants, which is, of course, to have a good life like everybody else, but also at the same time to be able to help people in business ways to also create a better life for themselves and for their future generations. And this is what pushed me to create a Symbiosis Infinity Group in order to be able to implement the conscious business growth model to different parts of the world and different sectors and different verticals.
Love it, man. This is really powerful stuff to me, because if you look around, I mean, if you don't know what's going on in our world when it comes to food supply, degradation of the planet, and things of that nature, you're probably living under a rock. And what made me want to interview you today is because of the things that you're doing and how that directly impacts these areas. And I'm just really hoping you have the kind of support that you want to have to build this. But I want to hear, what is the symbiosis effect? How would you explain that?
Thank you. It's a long story, but I'll make it short. So I got inspired by the fact that after I had this personal changes in my life, and it forced me to basically go inward. So I decided to go back to a little village where I was actually spending all my summers as a kid, and it's in the mountains. I'm from the Alps in France, and then I spent 5 months there, mostly alone with my dog, being in tune with nature, looking at nature all around me, having long nature walks. And this really inspired me for the name of the company, because if you look at nature, it is in full symbiosis. That means that if you look, for example, at trees, how they operate, they don't compete with each other. They understand they're part of a system where if they help each other, if they sustain each other, then the whole forest grows in harmony. And looking at how animals interact as well, how animals interact with vegetation, that the fact that when in the morning the birds start singing, it awakens the flowers, it awakens the vegetation. Everything is balanced and in tune. Everything is grounded in one principle. We are all interconnected. So whatever I think, whatever I do, will have an incidence on you, maybe even if you're on the other side of the world. So I came to the conclusion that we don't need to look for AI models to implement, business processes that work and that can have a positive impact while still making money, because making money is important for everybody. We live in a world where without money, you cannot sustain a good standard of living, and we all need money to live. But there is more ways to make money than the traditional ways that we have learned so far. And being in symbiosis with your environment, understanding your business environment, understanding the needs and goals of your entire ecosystem and each and every stakeholder that you can impact, creates more financial results on the mid to long term. Because if you're part of a chain and this chain as a weak link, the entire chain breaks down or is weak. But if you make sure that every part of your chain, that means every stakeholder that is within your environment, is sustainable, is treated fairly, is able to gain in a certain way equally as you do, then your chain becomes unbreakable. That means you're grounded, you're resilient, and you're here for the long term. And this is how we help companies build that.
I love that. Okay. So you're helping companies kind of build, I guess, what would you call it, sustainable growth? Is that what you're helping companies do? Is that part of
it? Correct. So we call it conscious business growth. It's also sustainable growth, but sustainability is a term that is used over and over again nowadays. We're based on very simple principles and three key pillars. The first pillar is called the circular supply chain. So to bring circularity in supply chain. So what does that mean? So just to give you a little example of a project that we're working on right now in Cameroon, is that we've identified that within the cocoa fruit, everyone loves chocolate, so everyone knows cocoa. So that's always a good example to take. If you take the example of the cocoa fruit, what we use mainly is the bean, right? So first you have the husk, then inside the husk you have the pulp, and then you have the cocoa bean pod, and inside this cocoa bean pod you have the cocoa beans. And this is mainly now the only part of the fruit that's being extracted and valorized. But if you look at the entire fruit, not only the husk, but the pulp and also the pods can be utilized for multiple applications. So we are rethinking the way we use nature's materials and raw material into new circular supply chains that not only can benefit communities and companies in developing regions, because it can add additional revenue streams, but these products, these materials have tremendous commercial and industrial application across multiple verticals. Here, in the case of the cocoa bean pod, you have the vertical of the food and beverage industry, biopackaging, biofuel, agriculture, fertilizers. So we're trying to think how we can extract more from what nature gives us and bring it full circle so that it can, again, benefit everyone that is involved within this environment.
Okay. You mentioned the coffee a couple of times. Is there a challenge that we don't understand about? Because I know I'm a big advocate for coffee. I think most of my friends are. We love coffee. And most of our days don't go very well if we don't have coffee in it.
Yeah.
So
We're all there.
share a little bit about what the challenges with the coffee beans and that you're seeing it in your business.
So we mainly deal with cocoa, as I said, but coffee is a little bit the same type of principle. But what we see around coffee mainly, and this is where we see, I'm sure that everybody has heard of the concept of fair trade, right? Fair trade has been introduced in the 80s, 90s, and it's an American organization that's been doing some great thing, and that in principle had great values and great perspectives. The issue that we see within our work and the main challenges that there is within this very long supply chain is that the supply chain is too long. So let's say you're going to Starbucks and your coffee is considered fair trade. So you're going to buy a premium for that because the premium you buy guarantees your fair trade label, right? But one question that we don't ask ourselves is, where is this premium going? Who takes on this premium? You pay for it, but who benefits from this premium? So if you analyze the supply chain from the people that actually grow the coffee or the cocoa till you, the consumer, are going to buy your coffee, the premium, if you reverse engineering the whole thing, ask yourself how many intermediaries there are in the chain. And you will figure out that the majority of the premium, 80 to 90% of the premium that you pay, doesn't go to the grower. It goes to intermediaries, it goes to the wholesaler, it goes to the retailer. And this is where the system broke down, is because there's so many intermediaries that actually the premium that we enjoy to pay as consumers, because nowadays 66% of consumers worldwide agree to pay a premium for their product if it's sustainable or ethical. So it's a growing number of a consumer base. But little do we know that it doesn't benefit the people that it should benefit, that it's supposed to benefit. So what we do is we try to shorten the circular supply chain. That's why we partner up with agencies, with people on the ground in developing regions that have direct access to farmers, that have direct access to cooperatives that regroup 3, 4, 5,000 farmers, sometimes in different industry, so that we can connect them directly with food processors, with buyers, without going through an intermediary, so that this premium can serve as a mean for circularity and sustainability as well, and community empowerment on their side as well. And everyone has to gain from that, except the intermediaries that unfortunately have been too greedy over the years, have taken too much high margins, and have simply corrupted the system of fair trade and sustainability. But what's done is done. So yeah, now it's time to reinvent all that.
Okay, I love this. This is a powerful idea, because when we buy our coffee, I don't think we think about what happens on the other side, because most of us that are consumers, we don't produce anything, so we don't realize the cost. Even those at the farm, we don't understand the cost and what they get in return for what they labor and grow in. So I want to come back to that. But when I ask you about ethical business, tell me your honest, raw feelings about the future of ethical business. Do you see this as an uphill climb? Like, this is going to be so hard because business is so corrupt? Or do you see light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see something that maybe we don't see that you can kind of encourage us about the future of ethical businesses? Can you help us out with that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a very good. Yeah, that's a very good question to ask. Look, of course, like everything else, this will not resonate with everybody, and it should not resonate for everybody. So I think that first of all, we deal with, there's a lot of more and more companies that are doing great stuff and that have been doing great, ethical practices for many years. The problem is that they don't know how to communicate it, and it's very important to communicate that to the public, to your consumers, but also internally to your employees, because this is where we see that when everybody goes to work for a company, whether you're an operator, a high executive, or a CEO, when you go and work with the same purpose in mind, that you're doing something good behind, there's something good, people that you're helping, that you're contributing positively to the planet, then the productivity goes up, the commitment goes up, the retention rate goes up. That means the companies don't have to spend so much in trying to keep their employee because they naturally stay. They don't have to rehire, they don't have to retrain. So it's very important at the core of the companies to communicate that, and it brings an whole nother level of human resources within companies. And we see that being duplicated across industries now more and more, and especially with the new younger generations, people don't look just for paychecks anymore. They look for purpose, they look for consciousness, and they look to contribute to the greater good. Because I think that we've come to an era, Mr. Yu, that people are realizing that our old model is breaking down. We see it day by day, year by year. The disparity, of course, the capitalism as it was invented by beautiful philosophers like Milton Friedman, for example. This linear model of extraction of short-term value is no longer in tune with the consciousness of society or how the world works. And we see it day by day. And we see also that we've exhausted a lot of resources in our planet, and we've exhausted places where to go source for the cheapest way. People have jumped from Eastern Europe to South America to Southeast Asia, and now we're looking at Africa to go and do some cheap sourcing. But where does it end?
Wow.
It has to end somewhere, and this is where the long-term vision needs to kick in and say, well, cheap is not necessarily good. Cheap is not necessarily long-term. What kind of compromise we can make in our business processes, in our purchasing, in our ways of creating value and adding to technology in certain areas of the world, where we understand that if we contribute more to the other party that we deal with, a little more or a lot more, we will benefit as well, on the long term. And it's the same thing as a human being, what you give out is what you get back. Whether you believe in God or Jesus or Buddha or Allah, it doesn't matter. It's universal law. What you give back will get back to you 100-fold. So if you do good around you, you'll get it back. If you do bad around you, well, you know what they say about karma. I will not say it. Yeah. But this is the way it is. But we believe that we have more and more inquiries by companies contacting us. And here we don't necessarily deal with very large companies, medium to large companies, but not multinationals, that are contacting us and we're interested in knowing more about this particular topic. How can we add more value, for example, around the cocoa fruit? How can we create more circularity around it? And this is where we brainstorm together so that we can really engage the resources locally at source. And I believe that the ethical business is growing into a direction where instead of, for example, exporting resources and raw materials from Africa elsewhere to get them transformed anywhere else in the world, this model is becoming obsolete. Because Africa and many countries in Africa, people are realizing, but we have all these resources, right? Why don't we transform them at source? Of course, there's a lot of challenges in doing so. There's a lack of infrastructure. There's a lack of financing. There is a lack of skilled manpower. Why? Because there has not been a circular way of doing things. There has not been a proper technical know-how exchange that could transfer this so that we can start transforming this raw material in those countries that have it and have been growing it for hundreds, if not thousands of years, so that it can add more value to the local economies, local businesses, communities, entire families, and in some cases, entire nations. And it's not rocket science to do. It's fairly easy. If you put all the stakeholders into the right equilibrium, right balance with the right resources all together, and you create this circle of circularity that enables the whole ecosystem to thrive, well, guess what? It might take a little bit more years, but everyone's going to thrive even more. And this is what it's all about.
Got it. Okay. I got 2 questions for you that I have to ask. But thanks for sharing what you did share just now. I know you're not in the US, but I am. And I'm watching this from my own vantage point. So I know that a lot of things that we see, they're a little bit warped. We can't really tell what's going on the other side, especially on the international side. when it comes to trade, like you discussed earlier in the show. From your perspective, with the work that you do internationally, tell me how you believe the United States is viewed and what opportunities does the United States have to improve things on our end as it pertains to ethical business, supply chain, creating sustainable growth, that kind of thing. And then as you answer that, I ask my second question. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm now living in Portugal, but I used to live in Canada. I used to live in Toronto,
Okay.
so in North America. So Canada is not the U.S. and U.S. is not Canada, because if you tell the Canadians they're from Trump tried
Yeah,
to take
that could
over
be a
Canada,
problem. Absolutely.
and that's going to be a problem. But yeah, one thing that you have to know is that the conscious capitalism principle, that is, based on ethical way of doing business, was actually initiated in the U.S. And there's more B Corp corporation in the U.S. than anywhere else in the world. So the U.S. is actually very advanced when it comes to ethical business and conscious capitalism. And one of the key father figure of the conscious capitalism movement is John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods. And he is the one who came with this principle of that if you treat your suppliers right, then your company is doing better. And this is how it started integrated. So I think the United States of America is definitely a powerhouse, will always be a powerhouse in the economic world. And it has a lot also of financial resources and technical resources that can be implemented in this type of models. For example, we work with several organizations and several very high profile people that are involved in impact funding, and they are based in the United States.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because this is where most of the big capital funds are, equity funds, and there's more and more of a lot of impact funding. It's very simple. Without money, we cannot build something sustainable, and we understand that. However, there is different types of money. There is I would say, the short-term capital investment or equity investment that's purely focused on return, that doesn't consider impact, while we want partners that actually are finding this right balance between the return on investment or return on equity and impact as well within this ecosystem. And this is called impact funding, and it's extremely important. So to cut the long story short, I believe the United States has a big role to play in the development of ethical business around the world. It has done so since the 80s, 90s. And a lot of great companies are doing amazing conscious business models. And it's actually spreading across Europe now. And I think the next opportunities will be to develop that in Middle East, in Asia, but this will take more time due to the different business mentality.
Okay, I'm going to add one question in because of something that you said. It kind of sparked something. I hold my last question. That'll be our last question for the show today. But I'm going to ask this question here and now. You're talking about building systems, and that's what I'm hearing. We're talking about ecosystems and sustainable growth. From your vantage point, of course, this is your opinion. We're not talking about stats and data or anybody else's opinion. Just know your opinion today. From what you're seeing, where do you think the biggest problem is? Is the problem with the mindset of a country or a region? Is the problem with is there a glut somewhere in the system that's holding up the kind of sustainability that could be possible? Is there one area that you can pinpoint that you believe is the problem, and that's why you're attacking that? Or give us your thoughts on that, John Christian.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. What I've seen in being in this space for a little bit over a year, but having a strong international experience and a very large business experience as well across 30 plus countries in different verticals, I had the opportunity to really negotiate business deal in multinational companies in a luxurious boardroom, or sitting down on 2 boxes plastic chair in a small city in China to negotiate my deals. So I've seen both sides, and I think that we as human beings, whether you are in China, in the US, or in Africa, we all want the same thing. We all want a good life. We all want food on our table. We all want a house. We all want to be healthy. We all want our kids to go to school, which are the basics. And we are inherently, wanting to do whatever it takes to be in this kind of framework and mindset to ensure that we are happy and healthy, and that our family is also happy and healthy. And we are all the same principle, but we want to achieve it in a different way at different scale. And the mindset, I think, that needs to change, which is very important, is that a lot of people are talking about sustainability, circularity as something that you need to put in the strategy paper of your company, but that's it. Once you tick your boxes and you implement a few things and you get a credit score, then you can become a B Corp, or you can become a green energy certified company. We want to bring things deeper than that. We want to be practical. Having your strategy in place is great. Having your certification is great, but this is just the start. We need to go on in the field. We need to analyze actually what we can do, what kind of processes, what kind of circularity we can implement between developing regions and developed markets by going on the ground, by analyzing, by talking to people, and implementing that in real life situations, in real business deal, in real business negotiations. And this is what we do as Symbiosis Infinity Group. We take this theory and these ideas and we put them in practical, scalable plans that can not only benefit people and planet, but the sustainable growth of companies worldwide.
I love that, man. All right, so this is our final question for today. And first of all, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You sound like you're doing great work, and I don't often get a chance to hear this. That's why I was so excited to have you on the show. I'd love to, and I just at times, because of all the shows that we have and the things that we're doing, I often speak for the people sometimes. And sometimes I try not to do that. But in this case, I want to kind of speak on behalf of the community, especially in the United States. Is there a role that we play in building the kind of sustainable business ecosystem that you were talking about earlier? What can we, regular people, if you will, what can we do to help make things better from a planet standpoint, a profit standpoint, a market development standpoint? Is there anything that we can do as a community, as a people, individually and collectively?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that these are very simple steps that you can take is reach out to your community leaders, see what kind of engagement you can have, how you can support the local and small businesses to thrive, and how we can create more links between the small businesses that thrives in communities and the communities themselves, and how we can reinvest in each other. Just to give you a little example of what I do here in Portugal, there's something called ReFood. So what we do at ReFood is that every Thursday afternoon, for example, but they do that weekly, we go and collect the food that's not used in supermarkets, in restaurants, in schools. We collect it, we repackage it, and in the evening, and families that cannot feed themselves, they come and take the food, because this is food that's going to be wasted otherwise. So these are simple things that we can start doing, because you know what? It changes the mindset step by step of people. And when you do a small deed like that, to understand that small actions that can be scalable in this way can help if one family, two families, and then it's going to have a trickle-down effect on other people, on other families. And this is how we slowly change the mindset of people, by understanding that whether it is at community level, at town level, or at the global level like we do at SIG, it does not really matter. What matters is your intention, and doing it with a pure heart, knowing that what you're doing is good for the people around you. That means it's good for you.
Love that. Jean-Christian, before we get out of here, I used to work as a chef in some of the kitchens here locally, and a little bit of supermarket work. And both of them, now this was some years ago, so I'm not sure if anything's changed, but it was pretty commonly known that the food that went to waste in the chef kitchen in the restaurant and the foods at the supermarket, we weren't allowed to take it. And as you say, refood it, we had to throw it away. It was like a rule. And they were like harsh penalties if you tried to do otherwise. So I'm not sure if that's still the same, but
yeah,
it's good to hear you're doing that, but it's kind of disappointing that we're not doing that. If anybody that's watching and listening knows about those rules and has heard any changes, private message me, drop some notes in the comments. I'd love to hear what's going on. Is it a new thing? Because what John Christian is talking about, that he's doing with the refood, if we did that, we would change lives. We probably would change world hunger, or at least national hunger, where we are in the United States. So John Christian, thanks again for being a part of our show.
Thank you for having me.
As John Christian Rindoni, founder of the Symbiosis Infinity Group and a conscious growth advisor. The man's doing great things at SIG, and you can find his work and you can find him at sigconsulting.net, sigconsulting.net. Thanks again for all you're doing to change the world for good, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monsieur, for spreading the word for me, and God bless you, and we'll be in touch definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. That's John Christian. I'm Mr. U. This is One-on-One with Mr. U. Have a great day. Thanks for watching and listening.
Thank you.